Hello to my dear friends, how are you? I'm going to answer a question for Miss Nikki. She is a valuable viewer that watches and asks me questions, and she asked a question about when did we find out that Micah has cerebral palsy and how did she get it? So was she born premature? Did it happen after she was born? Before she was born, you know, what happened with Micah? I was going to do a live event to answer this question, and then we could, you know, get more involved as you talk to me live, and that did not work. So I'm just going to answer it on a video, ask me any questions that you might have that I don't cover down in the comments. But before I answer your question, let's go take a look at Micah. She's about to get on the bus. Let's get a quick glimpse of her for the day, and then I'll come back and answer your question. Micah, you getting on the van? You going to see Bridget? They got an intense conversation on the radio there.
Yeah.
Bobo's coming to see Micah. There goes Micah. And here's Maya.
Hi guys. Okay, that's funny. All right, you're good.
She's telling you her nose itches. And all she talks about is seeing Bridget.
Right. All right, you're good.
Bobo. Bobo. You can't get on the van, Bobo.
Are you trying to go to work with Micah?
Yeah. He got in trouble this morning. He ate William's sandwich right off the stove or the counter somewhere in the kitchen.
Really?
Yeah, William was pretty mad.
Watch out, Bill.
Lovely Miss Tanea with us today taking care of Micah. And she is a newlywed, so you can tell her congratulations in the comments.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so the question of the day is, how did Micah get cerebral palsy, and when did she get cerebral palsy? Well, Micah was our first child. She's the first baby of 6. Micah is 27 years old. And when she was born, she was actually overdue by about 2 weeks. Now, I know these days, 27 years later, they do not allow mothers to go that far past a due date. But way back when Micah was born, it wasn't that big of a deal because you don't know exactly, most of the time, you don't know exactly when your baby is supposed to be born. So Micah was a little bit overdue. She was a home birth, and that is another whole video of why we would have a baby at home, but both of our girls were born at home. It was not the fault of having Micah at home. What I think happened that I did not figure out until Micah was several years old, there were 2 episodes that happened during my pregnancy that I did not even mention during my pregnancy because I didn't think it was a big deal. After the episode happened, Micah seemed to move around and be like normal, and I went to appointments with my midwife, and everything was like it was supposed to be. I was growing appropriately. They listened to the heart beating, and I don't remember all the things that they checked for, but everything looked good all the way through my pregnancy. I did get high blood pressure at the end, and I had to pretty much be on bed rest there at the very end of my pregnancy. But what happened was there were 2 different times when it felt like there was a basketball in my tummy going boom, 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 boom. What I think happened years later as I thought about this, I think it's possible that Micah had 2 seizures while I was pregnant with her, and it would have been during this time. But after the episode was over, Micah was moving around and everything seemed like normal, so I wasn't real worried. It was my first pregnancy. I didn't know that I needed to be worried about stuff. Now, after Micah was born and all my other pregnancies, I probably got a lot more uptight about any little thing that would happen that would be different. But at the time, it just wasn't a big deal. So Micah was born. It was a very long, intense labor. Had I been in a hospital, they probably would have taken Micah C-section, but my midwife had been doing this for a long time, and she had seen labors go long, especially when first. It's not uncommon for a very first labor and delivery to take an extra long time. So she was monitoring, everything seemed to be okay. Then when Micah was finally born, she was born at 9 p.m. on August 30th, 1988. When she was born, she was kind of limp and lifeless. Micah went to one hospital. I went to another hospital. I don't remember why we ended up being separated, but for whatever reason we were. So William is on the phone the next morning, and I'm on the phone calling all of our friends the next morning saying that William's on his way to get the baby and everything is fine. And I really was not able to get out. I was doing so poorly physically after I had Micah from the long labor and delivery. It just really wiped me out. I could hardly walk. I remember walking kind of stooped over. I was in so much pain after Micah was born, and it was terrible. So I didn't even go with William to pick up Micah. I know that sounds insane. I would probably never do that today, but back then, I don't know. I was just young and dumb and did a lot of really silly things, and I suppose that was one of them. But while I'm on the phone calling everybody to say that we had a baby and William's on his way to go get her, I get a call from William saying that they are keeping Micah in the NICU because it looks like Micah is having seizures. It seems like I remember the midwife saying that Micah might be having seizures. She was going like this with her hands, and it looked like it could be a seizure to her. So the next morning, Micah just stayed in the regular nursery. Back then, it was not looked upon very well to have a baby at home, to have midwives. That was just like a taboo thing, and that was just a silly thing to do. So they didn't really monitor Micah and take care of her when she got there. I think that's why it took all night long for somebody to discover something. But so Micah was in the hospital for 21 days. All we knew is that Micah had brain damage, but we didn't have any idea what that meant. Nobody ever said the word cerebral palsy. I just knew that Micah had brain damage, and that was really all we knew. So Micah was in physical therapy. She was in occupational therapy, so that's PT, OT. She was in speech. So we got her into all these programs and had some wonderful people working with Micah. Years ago, Micah was born in Houston, Texas. Way back then, they had a cerebral palsy center. I've forgotten the name of it. They no longer have that center there, but that's where I would take Micah to get her therapy. And it was one of the therapists that she had when Micah was about a year old. She mentioned the word cerebral palsy to me. And I had never heard that word. I didn't have any idea what that was. And so I said, cerebral palsy, what is that? You think Micah has that? Well, she's not a doctor. She was a therapist, so she couldn't diagnose Micah. But she said, based on her experience and other people she had dealt with, Micah looked like she had cerebral palsy. So then we ended up being in the doctor's office somewhere and finding out that Micah actually had cerebral palsy. I'm not sure what that changed, except that we were able to get her learn more about, I guess, cerebral palsy itself as we went along. I've never had any friends that had children with special needs. Not very many, maybe very briefly. Nothing very close. The only thing really that I've learned about cerebral palsy is just by taking care of Micah and learning about her, and maybe if somebody shares a story or a therapist might help me out. And I'm just now thinking as I'm telling this video, we were at the Cerebral Palsy Center, but Micah had not been diagnosed with cerebral palsy. So that seems kind of funny. I guess we were just directed, I don't know, maybe it was just part of us being young and dumb and just not knowing, but knowing that that's where they had therapy to send her. I'll have to ask William about that. But anyway, that is Micah's story, and how she got cerebral palsy, I think was from 2 episodes during my pregnancy. I think that Micah I think that something happened to the cord and it got crimped or it got twisted or something happened to it very briefly. Those 2 episodes go with a CAT scan. Micah has an assault on the left side of her brain and assault on the right side of her brain, and that would equate with the 2 episodes that happened during gestation. So I think that's what happened. It wasn't ever really diagnosed as to what happened, how it happened, but it does look like from the CAT scan that it happened during gestation. Those 2 episodes make sense, they go together. We didn't really know what was wrong with Micah until she was about a year old, but we had taken her to a lot of places. So I hope, Nikki, that answers your question. Thank you so much for asking me. And feel free to ask more questions in the comments and I will answer them. And I do plan on having more live events. I have to get this figured out. I don't know. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But thank you so much for being here. I will look to the hills from whence cometh my help, for my help cometh from the Lord. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.